So, to put it lightly, that Elon Musk has had a bit of an interesting week is only to say that if you've paid attention what goes on, especially most of it coming through from Twitter, and of course Elon Musk tweeting about this himself. Now, as I've said before, I really want to see how Twitter dies, and even though I still do have a Twitter account, I don't really use it other than to post these videos just to see if Twitter mostly still works as like a form of promotion. And trust me, to varying degrees at best. At best, I'm still getting more success of things like Threads and even Blue Sky. Blue Sky, in particular, really actually picking up, which is quite surprising me. So I'm doing a lot more of experimentation on Blue Sky at the moment. Again, like I say, marketing background, etc. Um, it's fun when we get new platforms. You get to try new things, see what works, see what doesn't. It's the new wild west frontier of marketing. It's a fun time indeed to be testing out those platforms. But of course, we're talking about Elon Musk because he has had somewhat of an interesting week. But most of these things, though, have gone a bit underreported. But what's worrying, of course, is when you look at all these things, these three stories, like connected together, they really do seem to form a lot of the stuff we've been saying about Elon Musk in the past couple of weeks. That he has some really worrying authoritarian policies, that he would, quite like to just engage in the wide scale destruction of regulations, that if it's another country, in the case of Brazil, which again we'll be getting to in a moment, he just doesn't give a damn. So there is a lot to say about some of these stories. And like any one of these stories could be a video in itself, to be honest. But I think taken together, this really says a lot about the bizarre state of Elon Musk. And is he ever not going to be a billionaire? Maybe one day someone will take Tesla away from him. I've said this before. In fact, someone else actually said in one of my comments where I brought this up last time, they said, oh, yeah, Warren Buffett, probably going to be the guy who ends up taking Tesla away from Musk. That would be kind of hilarious if that ends up happening. Twitter has plummeted in its stock price and vastly overestimated. That ain't ever coming back. That ain't ever coming back. And eventually, the banks and, of course, the other investors that helped Musk to buy this going to be quite annoyed that they're not getting their promised returns on this. So it is very much a TikTok situation for this. And then, of course, the stuff going on in Brazil at the moment with, Twitter being sort of fully cancelled. Massive blow, of course, to Musk on that, and a huge uptick, of course, in users for Threads and Blue Sky. If you saw, or at least were around for that when all that stuff started to kick off, very quite interesting indeed. But we'll get more into that in a moment. But before we do continue Musk's three interesting stories this week, please do remember to click on the like and the share button. And of course, down below, there is the Patreon page. There's the one-off dish link called Buy Me Coffee. We can, well, buy me coffee. There's the YouTube thank you button. And of course, as always, there's the Pony Club down below, as always. So let's crack on then into this. So what's happening this week? Well, like I say, most of these quick stories, but when you take them together, really show once again the character of Elon Musk. So the first one comes, of course, Donald Trump saying, if I am re-elected, then I am going to create this government efficiency commission. And this is going to be a commission, or at least a task force, to try and do a full audit of the federal government. And then it's going to make drastic, again, we don't know what drastic reforms that would be. And of course, who is going to head up this commission? None other than, of course, Elon Musk. And Musk has gladly said on Twitter that, of course he'll do it. Of course he'll step in to serve America. And of course, it really does worry you what kind of drastic reforms Elon Musk would take. Because ultimately, for someone like that, who is definitely a full market free he's a definite free market fundamentalist libertarian, as we've seen in the past. He would decimate any regulation, any regulatory body, take the referee out of the game, and just let companies run wild. And a perfect example of why you want regulation, why you want those regulatory referees. Just look what happened, last year? Well, you had the big train crash in, I think it was Ohio, and the massive chemical spill that resulted in. That was explicitly because of regulatory negligence. There was no referees, and of course, the stripping away of regulations of America's railroads, and of course, chemical safety regulations as well, which you'd think Americans would be quite worried about. So ultimately, that's what Musk would want. And of course, if something like that happens, well, not their fault, It's not regulatory failings. They should have been safer themselves, because, only companies can really ever truly police themselves. And of course, this moves on to the bizarre second story that comes into this. Because Musk decided, if you haven't heard, to retweet to his over almost 2 million Twitter followers at this point. How many of them are real versus how many of them are bots? We don't know. But to say retweeting this really weird conversation that Tucker Carlson had with a Holocaust revisionist, describing it as very interesting and worth watching. And I don't think that's how you should be really describing a Holocaust revisionist at all. Because the revisionist went on to say that, oh, no, you don't understand, these concentration camps weren't bad at all. The reason why people die was just a lack of planning, just bad planning. I'm sorry, that is a horrific take to think about the Holocaust. And for Elon Musk to turn around and say, oh, it's very interesting, worth watching, I think says a lot about the state of Elon Musk's Twitter timeline. I've mentioned before on these videos, I think Musk has almost self-indoctrinated himself with this. We've been through this before when we've looked at Breaking Twitter or Extremely Hardcore. I think he has almost self-indoctrinated himself with some pretty crazy ideas, because this is a man who is on Twitter non-stop. If you look at just how much he tweets, he is on there non-stop. And it should be worrying how radicalized his own algorithm has made him. I think that should be incredibly worrying, which now brings us, of course, onto the third story of Musk's weird week. This, of course, takes us back over to Brazil. And to just give the Cliff Notes version of what's going on here, the whole reason why Brazil is blocking Twitter in the first place is because, Brazil said, hey, there's stuff on this platform we think, you should be banning. Bear in mind, Musk has banned stuff for other countries. Just apparently, not for Brazil, but, if it's an authoritarian leader who asks him to block stuff, well, oh, my word, he'll be there in a flash to block stuff for them. But of course, when this was brought up, Brazil said, okay, you have to elect a representative. Musk went, well, you can't sue me if I don't have a representative. Again, very much, Cliff Notes version, a bit more, complicated legalese going on behind the scenes more than that. But again, just for time, you can't sue me if you can't do that. To which then the Brazilian court judge went, absolutely, I can. And of course, ended up blocking Twitter. Of course, this brings in Starlink, because obviously this is Elon Musk's own internet sort of platform provider. And he was going to try and circumnavigate this whole Twitter ban by saying, well, actually, if you've got Starlink, you can still access Twitter because I'm not going to follow through on this ban with Starlink. And guess what Brazil did in return? The judge then decided to freeze all of Starlink's assets in Brazil. So this still continues. This whole Twitter versus Brazil, or should we say Musk versus Brazil on this. And bear in mind, Musk has failed in the past when he has taken on countries. Musk has taken on not Switzerland, Sweden before, over the whole Tesla stuff. That is in itself still a developing story. He has failed multiple times to sort of go on that because Sweden is very very sort of pro union, and Musk still sort of does not want to negotiate with these unions. But that's another story in itself. And I think you get to see a peak in the week of Elon Musk. But it goes to show you a wide range of stories here of a guy who, if he had the chance, would go into America and just strip it of all rules and regulations. A guy who is being, you know, I don't know, radicalized by his own algorithm, where he would retweet that and say, "Oh yeah, fascinating, interesting watch," right? Now he has actually deleted that tweet. We'll give him that at least. Probably some Tesla investors went, yeah, you shouldn't really be tweeting that type of stuff. So take that, with a grain of salt. But like I say, I think he's been very much radicalized by his own algorithm. And then, of course, you've got the stuff that's still going on of Elon Musk versus his now arch rival, Brazilian Voldemort, as Musk has dubbed him. you know, it's a bizarre week in the life of Elon Musk, that is for sure. But what a bizarre week it has been. But it just goes to show you he'll gladly join a subcommittee to get rid of regulations, but whenever he is held to account by regulations, it is like the worst thing in the world. And, terrible. But that's been Elon Musk's week in Brazil, and especially around the world. And I think those are three stories really exemplify his bizarre behavior, to be honest. And it has been getting increasingly more bizarre. And I think that is down to the fact he's been radicalized by his own algorithm. And if Donald Trump does win and he ends up on that subcommittee, oh boy, that's going to be a weird committee, a really weird committee to see what comes out of there. But as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.